So, hi everybody. I'm here with Olson. And if you've been hanging around the TLC for the last few weeks, you might have seen Olson in the comments. He's E Olson Helper, as I think his handle. And I've gotten to know Olson here a little bit. And after getting to know him a little bit over the phone, I said, "Hey, would you be willing to tell your story to come out of the lurk and be known and yeah, so here I am with Olson. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. After listening to so many, I listen to a lot of them. Like I listen to them during work, and I always have it in my pocket. And so I rarely ever actually watch randos. I just always listen to it, and I've listened to like 50 or some odd ones. But it's kind of surreal to be on one and to be talking.
Yeah, well, I think for all of us, eh, I will ask you about your story, but just to talk about this a little bit, there's a clear pattern for coming out of the lurk. It's like I can see someone else's journey and be like, oh, this is wh- where they are right now is like at this point in my journey where I was,
Yeah, yeah,
and yeah, I've seen you on some of Chris Howard's streams, and
yeah,
for anyone listening, if you're up early, there are a lot of good things that Chris Howard's doing, especially with Chad jumping on and you there. And if you like, I'm just not up early enough, but if you're a European or if you're up, at like the 4, 5, 6 a.m., Chris Howard's where it's at in TLC. So
yeah, yeah. He's usually on around 5:30, around 5:30. So
yeah,
yeah,
cool. All right. Well, we might as well start with the real question, which is tell us about the home you grew up in.
yeah. So kind of I was born and raised in Northern California. I'm about 20 to 30 minutes south of where PBK is currently, and so it's kind of fun to hear him when he talks about geographical locations. I know exactly what he's talking about. Um, and so I grew up in a moderate-sized town there. We always thought it was small, but now that I've gone about and I've seen smaller towns, it's not that small anymore. Um, the main thing with my family growing up, both my parents are believers and grew up going to church, and being raised in a Christian family, and so that's a huge blessing. Um, but the other major aspect of our family is that my family owned a small business, is a feed store, so like dog food, cat food, pet food, horse food, all sorts of things, and so that was a huge part of my upbringing as well, and part of our family and our story. When I hear Zep talk, I relate when he talks about the pizza place. I'm like, oh yeah, that was my family. That was my growing up, um, and that was on. It's kind of interesting because the houses I lived in were always like my town literally has a railroad track going through the middle of it, and the house I lived in was on the good side, but the feed store was literally on the bad side of the tracks, and so I grew up with random people who were struggling with issues coming through our store and stuff. So I just thought that was normal. I didn't, and all sorts of different nationalities and everything. And so I just thought, the world's full of interesting people. And so I think I get that from my dad. He's a natural salesman, and so he likes to just meet new people and talk to them, and so things like that. So we had the small business growing up, kind of church wise. We grew up in when I was really small, like up through probably first, second, maybe third grade. We went to a church called an Open Bible Church, and they're kind of like a charismatic light ish. And then my dad started keeping the store open 7 days a week. Up until that point, it was only open 6 days a week. And once he started keeping open 7 days a week, my mom decided she wanted to go to a different church. So we started going to like your classic seeker friendly church, that we met in like a middle school for a long time, and we had skits and contemporary music and stuff, and that was a pretty good church. I was in that church all the way through to my first couple of years of high school, so that was probably the church I grew up most in. Um, and then when I was in early elementary school, I was homeschooled. My brother, I have a older brother and an older sister. My sister's 5 years older, and my brother's 6.5 years older. So I'm the youngest by a lot. So I was the wee little baby that always had to sit in the middle of the car. And I was like, why do I always have to sit in the middle? Because you're the smallest. And so we always had we had a green 1981 Buick uh, hoopty car for a long time.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
something about those first cars that we have that sticks with you. For me, it was my parents. My mom had they were both like Plymouth. Plymouth doesn't even exist anymore. It's like a Plymouth Reliant station wagon that my dad
oh
had.
yeah,
And it was like it was the same kind that would have like the wooden paneling on the side
oh yeah.
of a car. They don't have that anymore, but his did not have wooden paneling. But like that first car, like that there's something about the memory of the first car that always stays with you.
Yeah, you weren't even cool enough to have the wood paneling.
My pa it was like a Flintstone car where you had to pick up the frame and
Yeah,
run.
helps with the rust, you know. So, um, so where is it?
Oh, I'm gonna pause the stream because we lost Olson. So hold on one second, and we're
So,
back.
so we, so I was homeschooled up until like the third grade. And so those first couple of years, I was at my my mom started working back inside the feed store. She was working at home for a long time, and then she started working back at the store. And so I'd go in with my dad early in the morning, um, and help him do stuff, get ready, count the change drawers and stuff. That was back when we still had pennies. And, and they and so then I would do like an hour or half an hour of homeschool work, spelling words and math basically. I was always interested in history, so she didn't have to worry about that. And then my grandpa, who was also involved at the store as well, a multi-generational store, he'd always take me to go have coffee with his old friends at the coffee shop in the morning. And so he had two groups of friends he would do that with, the 8 o'clock group and the 10 o'clock group. And then after the 10 o'clock group, he'd sometimes take me to go like golfing, hitting a bucket of balls, or we'd travel around to the other stores to see what they're doing. And then he'd take me home, and he would sit down and have soup for lunch and give me lunch. And he would read and have a nap, and I'd just watch whatever he had on the TV, like History Channel or baseball or something. Uh, and so that was and then I got to play sports. I was always interested in sports. Um, and so I've played most sports you could imagine, and some way or another. And um, so anyway, so that was part of my elementary years, my formative elementary years. So if I'm kind of weird, that's probably why I grew up with old men drinking coffee. And then went to elementary school. The elementary school I went to was a Lutheran, and so we would have Lutheran. We'd have our chapel days were very liturgical and follow the Lutheran. So at home I was going to like a seeker friendly evangelical church, super low church, and then at school I was going to high church Lutheran. Um, in the middle school, I transferred to a reform school, which was almost the exact same thing, high high church. And then in high school, I wanted to play football in high school, and so I had to go to the public high school. So I ended up going public high school with like 2,000 kids in our graduating class and stuff. And the main thing growing up as a kid that I loved was sports. I loved so if you're interested in talking sports ball, you talk to me. I know there's not a lot of TLCers out there.
How about those 49ers this year, man? Although, they didn't do so well against the Seahawks, so
They got toasted yesterday. I don't want
yeah,
to talk
I
about
love McCaffrey.
it. Yeah,
Despite him having yeah, he missed a pass and it bounced right into the other guy's hands. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's tough. So so I loved sports, specifically football is my favorite sport. And so I got good grades so I could play sports. My parents are like, if you dip below a B average, and or if you get anything less than a B, basically you can't play sports. So I kept my grades up. I kept my nose clean, partly because of sports, and partly just I saw my older brother and sister get in trouble a lot, and I was like, that doesn't seem worth it to me. Like I saw the like the consequences to their actions, and I'm like, that doesn't seem worth it. It just seems easier to just go along and follow the rules. Um, and so,
You might be unique in that respect, is that you know, there's sort of a, underlying joke of TLC that we're all full of, like, really disagreeable people, so we don't fit into nice little, boxes of, you know, so a combination of, like, high in openness and then disagreeable is, like, we're always, like, cast out of whatever box we get put into, but I suspect that you are more agreeable than the typical person in here, in TLC. Yeah.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm super high in openness, and so I love meeting new people and hearing stories. Like I said, I could listen to randos all day, so I love meeting new people. Um,
Well, you're talking about your upbringing with, like, random people kinda walking into the store and just dealing
yeah,
with all sorts of people. Yeah, I imagine that that kind of builds a wide perspective on what's out there and gets you used to all sorts of people, right?
yeah, yep, yep. And go in coffee shops with old men, and they are all sorts of different types of old men there, different political persuasions, and stuff, and they're all having good conversations. They are all friends, even though they disagreed with each other on almost everything. Um, oh, my dog's coming in. You might see my videos with me walking the dog. That's like mostly my channel is me walking the dog, and he's in here, but he's not supposed to be. So
One of my great regrets in life is that I am now allergic to dogs, even though I love dogs, and it's simply because I was not exposed to them enough, either in my youth or as an adult. Ah, very cute.
sorry. So that's
What's
what
his
most of
name?
my his name's Pluto.
Oh, that's a great name. Yeah.
Yeah, we rescued him about 9, 10 months ago. So he's two.
That's
Anyways,
Well, PBK was, well, I think what was he, a dog trainer or because he had this was maybe a year ago, but he had a dog that he was either taking care of or I don't like I think it was like what are they called? Like a seeing eye dog, like,
oh
especially
yeah,
trained, but
yeah,
he was doing something with that, him and his wife.
yeah. That's hard work. It's hard to train those ones. He is not that well trained. so anyways, going so high school. Um, I did football. That's basically what I was focused on. In terms of like religious upbringing, like religious thought at that time, like from a very early age, I remember thinking deep thoughts about thinking deep thoughts about God, time, like, well, why am I here? What's going on? What's the purpose of life? Things like that. So I started asking those questions pretty early, and just kind of thinking about them at night while listening to alternative rock radio and falling asleep. And that's actually, Neal, that's one of the things that you had that conversation where you did punk, where you talked about punk. Like that was like one of my favorite
With Mark
conversations. I
S.
love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. That was a great conversation. Um,
There are a few
and so,
people in the corner that know, like, way more about music than I do. Chad probably knows more about music than anyone I've ever met. I've estimated, like, people within this space, they got, like, 1% openness. Chad's probably, like, in the 0.01% openness to, like, audio, like, sound, aesthet like, he can listen to a song and tease out all the elements of the song. He's like, "You don't hear that underlying this?" I'm like, "No, I don't hear that underlying this." Like, it's
it's underlined. You're not supposed to hear it. No. So, um, let's see. The
keep going, I'm gonna listen. I gotta close my door for a moment.
Sure. Um, so I asked, I've been interested in deep thoughts and conversations for a long time. Um, High school, I was kind of like a nerd jock. I didn't really hang out much with the jocks. I hung out with the nerds, but at the same time, I wasn't really doing what the nerds were doing. I was training and becoming a jock. All that I mentioned to say my senior year of high school, I trained all through high school for our last game. You know, we didn't have a good football team. We were actually pretty bad, but I was like, we're going to beat our rivals. Like that was something, a high goal that was achievable. And so I was like, we're going to train. I'm going to train hard and I'm going to get everybody on board. And we're going to do that throughout my senior year. I was starting, all the time, every game on defense at least. And then the, then the, the last game of the year against the rival, basically through a weird confluence of like people coming back from injuries and just kind of my position where I was able to play most any position on the defense, they kind of kept me back. They took me out of the starting rotation, put me as like a rover to fill in for anybody who got injured, and I ended up not playing really at all that senior rivalry game, and I trained basically, you know, I dedicated 4 years of my life to train for that one thing, and I ended up, you know, just being a complete nothing burger. And I just remember riding home from that game, just feeling completely empty and like, all right, God, well, you've stripped me of this idol. Now, what do you want me to do? Um, and
What what
so,
what
go
was
ahead.
it that allowed you to have that posture in that moment that you could, even in that moment, see it as an idol? Like, what? Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't really have a good answer for that. I've never been asked that one. Um, you know, because I was still in the church, I was still going, and I felt like I had a sincere belief. You know, I had the in evangelical circles, you know, you say the prayer or whatever, and not that I think there's anything magical or mystical about that, but I said that when I was like 6. I remember that sitting in a little one of those little teeny tiny plastic chairs in a what's a Sunday school class, and then I got baptized when I was in middle school. So um, God and my faith were always something that was important to me, but it just wasn't the important thing. You know, football was always the important thing. I didn't get good grades because I was like, hey, I'm going to glorify God with my the works of my hands. I was like, I'm going to get good grades so I don't get in trouble with my parents and I can't play football. So
Yeah. No, I can identify with that. It's yeah. Yep.
so but that's a great question. So then the end of my so that's kind of my senior year, and then I went through my long story short, I ended up at the end of my senior year getting to go like on a mission wrestling trip to Russia for like 2 weeks, and that was pretty cool. And then I went to I went on a family fishing trip, and I came back and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and I was going to go to community college. I ended up going to community college, even though I could have gone to different schools like universities. I had good enough grades, but I didn't want to do the paperwork of filling out the applications. Like I didn't want to write that personal essay because I was like, I don't have much to say. You know, everybody has these like horror stories of life. You know, even at that point, they were telling, you know, write your how you overcame situation A, and I'm like, I didn't overcome any situation A. I was just good. I don't know.
I will
Um,
agree because I think overcoming yourself is usually the most difficult thing. I mean, most people don't realize that. Most people think like, "Oh, really? It's like accomplishing some goal or something like that." But the real accomplishment is like accomplishing yourself. Like, oh, like
yeah,
your pride being uh
yeah.
what's the word? Destroyed or like and that's something that I did not know until I was much older. That's a way greater achievement than yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think I had the self awareness at that point to kind of point to that. Anyways, I was going to community college and I didn't know what to do with the rest of my summer. And my sister, well, back up a little bit. My youth pastor in the church I was going to, basically, that was his side job. His main job was actually running a Christian summer camp in California called Sunshine Specialized Camping Ministries, and they were on houseboats. Basically, the churches would come down and they'd rent out houseboats, and all the youths would be and they had 13 campers and two church staff on a houseboat, and then two Sunshine staff, and It was on the Sacramento San Joaquin River Delta, just out of Stockton, California. And then that was one location. The other location was up at Lake Shasta in Northern California. That's back by where Free Rillian lived for a bit, just north of Redding up there. And so um, we
How
were,
close is that to, like, the sequoias, like, the great redwood forest? Is that pretty
yeah, the
close or
pretty,
no?
I mean, California speaking, it's like 2.5 hours, but
Okay.
the rest of the world thinks it's a little bit further. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so, um, so anyways, he was doing that, and then my sister had gotten the opportunity to work with him. She kind of has her own separate story of walking the hard life, and then coming back and learning to follow Jesus all over again. And so that part of her story is then once she came back, she had an opportunity to work with the summer camp, and she's like, "Hey, I know the people down in the Delta are needing somebody to help out with them on this different position." And she's like, "You should ask them." And so I asked them, and they're like, "Sure, come on out." And I think they were just thinking I'd be out there like on the day, like a couple times a day during the day. But I ended up just staying out there, and I don't think they had the heart to tell me to leave. And so I was just, but I was helping. Like I wasn't, slacking off. But I loved it, and so I ended up getting to do that for 4 years through college, for 4 summers. And when people used to ask me like, "What kind of Christian are you? Like, what denomination?" Like that was actually what I feel like my denomination was growing up
You're a
was,
summer camp, houseboat Christian.
yeah, Somerville Houseboat Christian, and it was very both relational ministry focused and incarnationally ministry focused. So the love of Christ is communicated through intense relationship. That's again, I think part of why I like the TLC is it's like you guys talk about, hey, we ask deep questions real quick, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I grew up. That's what I like. That's what I became known as. That's what I grew up knowing as like, hey, this is what real Christianity looks like. You're interested enough in the person to say, hey, tell me about the tough stuff in life and the good stuff in life, and let's talk about that. And then also incarnationally, where it's like servant focus, right? He came down in the form, he took on the form of a servant, and so however you could serve and help other people, whatever they're asking. You got 13 campers, and they're always like, "Hey, blah blah blah, can you help with this? Hey, can I do this? Hey, can you?" And then you got the church ministry people, and they're like, "Yeah, can we flip our schedule around and twist it two ways and go this?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, let's try to accommodate that." And so, just learning to both relational and incarnational ministry, and so that's kind of like the background of the tenets of what a Christian faith looked like, um, for me. And then in college, I went to community college for a year and a half, and then I hated it because it has neither community, and it's not a very good college. And so I tried to
That's
get
that
out of
that
there.
that's actually a really funny joke. It's like, I went to community college, I hated it 'cause it was neither a community nor college.
That's a yeah, yeah. It's funny now. It wasn't so funny then. Um, and and so I wanted to get out of there as quick as I could. And we were going into college. I originally thought I was going to go into something like engineering or something. I did drafting in high school, and I really loved it. Um, but to get out of community college, I had to go through all my math sequences, like in calculus. And I took calculus in community college. I ended up getting an A, but I had to study really hard and a lot. And and at the end of that, I was like, is this what I want my college experience to be? Do I want it to be studying really hard and a lot because I could do it, but that's what it would take? Or do I want to be more free, to pursue relational and incarnational ministry, like going back to my faith? And and so I decided to go the more free route, the easier route. And so I got out of community college, and I got a degree in history from University of California, Davis. Woo, what Aggies? And and they you'll hear PVK talk about Davis, and so that was the town. And but anyways, during my college experiences, the two other major things other than houseboats that really happened that were informative, where I had my first close friend pass away. She was a girl that was like a girlfriend, and then I broke up with her because I was young and dumb, and I was scared and I didn't know what I was doing with my life. But we stayed in contact, we stayed friends, and then she was going to be driving back to my hometown where I was at the time, and she was actually visiting somebody else. But she's like, "Hey, let's get together," and I was like, "Okay, whatever. Call me when you get here." And then she ended up dying on a car crash on the way home. So that was a big, having to deal with death, learning about that. Like that's a big thing you gotta process. Um, and so that was kind of like learning, going through all those steps of grief and going through all those steps of okay, life really is short. Like you're not guaranteed tomorrow, uh, because you can die in a car crash, like just doing normal stuff, and it wasn't her fault or anything, and just random things in life, um, and having to process that. And then so that was a big thing. And then the other big thing is, so I said I got to do 4 years of houseboats. Fifth year, well, in college, after 3 years of houseboats, I was like, maybe I'm going to take a break from that. And I didn't know what I was doing. My mom's like, "Hey, your grandpa's in Africa." I was like, "Oh yeah, my grandpa was in Africa." Um, and so I contacted the people he was staying with. It's like, "Hey, can I come just hang out for my summer?" And they're like, "Yeah, come on out. Well, we're going to actually be back stateside over the summer, so you could house at our house, and that's what you would do." And um, so I got to go to Africa for 3 months, to Cameroon, and that was really really informative, just in terms of like getting to see how the majority of the world lives and how the majority of the world operates, and it's very different than us, and it's very different than our American bubbles that we live in. Um,
So how long was that? You said 3 months?
3 months, yeah.
3 months, okay.
So
I'm curious more about that. Can you tell, like, what was your typical day like when you were there? And how long ago was this? Like, early 2000s or
yeah, it was early 2000. So it was 2000. It was probably either summer oh three, oh four, oh six, the summer oh six. I may have to adjust my phone and stuff because my battery's running out.
oh, no problem.
Um,
We could pause it
but
again if we need to. Yeah.
yeah, let's go ahead, pause it, and then I'll set it back up.
Okay, I'll pause.
All right. So day in life, Cameroon. They it's kind of we had I didn't really have much responsibilities, so it's kind of lackadaisical. My my grandpa was stayed with me in the house, the missionary couple's house that we were house sitting for, and they had a person that was helping them out, like a house worker cook person. And so she was still coming in and working. And then there's a gardener it's on like a little compound, a medical and church compound. And so there's like a gardener guy about my age, named Terrence, if he ever sees this. Hi, Terrence. And so I befriended him, and so we get up, and my grandpa was doing some ministry up at the prison, and so we walk up there. That was probably like a 45 minute to hour walk, pretty much almost like straight uphill. It was like a really steep hill incline. And he was ministering to some people up there. I went a couple of times. Much to my shame, I didn't do as much ministry. In fact, looking back on it, like after I came back and was processing my time there, one big thing I had to deal with was just like shame, because I didn't help as much as I probably could have in a lot of different ways. I got to see how my grandpa, one time he came back from working with the prison ministry, prison guys, and he was just bawling, like he was just crying, and it's kind of weird to see your grandfather, that you most of your life has been kind of a stoic man, just crying his eyes out, and it's because the one of the guys he was working with had tuberculosis, and the medical people at the prison weren't going to keep giving him any more medication, and so basically it was like a death sentence, um, and so just kind of seeing his heart for that, and that kind of broke my heart and really humbled me, because it's like, would I cry for that guy? Like, would I feel the same things for that? Like, and I think now that I'm older, I'm closer to saying yes. But even so, like man, like what compassion my grandpa was showing, and just how he was really feeling that. And so a lot of coming back from Cameroon was just dealing with like both processing, hey, I have all these material goods and these people don't. Processing, hey, I had this time there, and I helped out with some stuff. Like I wouldn't say I was completely useless, but yeah, I didn't help out probably nearly as much as I probably could have. And so um, one of the things was I got a concussion. I was running with Terrence. We'd go running in the afternoons whenever it wasn't raining, um, and there was like a bar, like almost like a little soccer goal, but it's for handball, like team handball. And we were running on the court, the handball court, and I decided to jump on the bar and and stop myself. Like in my head as I was running, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be so cool!" And I'm gonna jump and hang on. As I jumped and I grabbed the bar, like my feet and my body came up completely like parallel with the bar, even a little further, my hand slipped off, and so from about 6 feet up, I went and landed basically on the back of my head, and so I don't think I blacked out. I heard everything and stuff, but there's definitely bells were ringing, and the doctor's like, oh yeah, you probably got a concussion. So I couldn't do anything for like a week, so except sit around and stuff. So I was reading and stuff, but anyways, so also, there was a homeschool co-op around, and they put on like a big learning thing for school, and so I helped with that. Anyways, um, that's kind of my time in Cameroon. And then so those are kind of the big things in college. I get out of college, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and I was working house boats again the next summer, and one of the churches come through like, hey, we're looking for an intern. You know anybody interested in doing it? I was like, I don't know, I'll see. And then after the summer, I was like, you know what, I should give that guy a call. And so I called him up, and he's like, yeah, come on down, you be our intern. And so I went down, and it's actually in the town of Ojai, which I just recently heard Gavin, who's that? Gavin Ortong or something? That guy?
Gavin Ortland.
Yeah, that guy. So that's the
Yeah.
town he was in, but I think he came like, you know, after I was there. And so I got to be in that. So as he was talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, I totally know that place. So I was there for a year as like a youth intern. And then I still didn't know what I do. And so the youth pastor asked like, hey, you should go to grad school. He wanted me to apply to Yale, but I was dating a lady who was going to Biola, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to Talbot, which is Biola's graduate program. So I went to Talbot. I got in, and I went there for about 6 months, and I was like thinking, I'll get a master's of theology and either become a preferred college teacher or go into ministry. But while I was there, again, I was just like, man, this is a lot of head knowledge. This is hard. This is a lot of head. I'm getting a lot of good head stuff, but I was like, my heart. So, anyways, we it's getting a lot of the head knowledge. Um, but I was like, I need if I'm going to be going into ministry, if I'm going to be teaching about Christianity, my heart and how I relate to people needs to change a lot. I need to grow a lot. Um, and so I was walking and praying one time along the sidewalk, and I saw some water flowing along in the gutter, and I just stopped, and I was just enjoying watching the water in the gutter because that's what you do. And and it occurred to me like, hey, you always wanted to go into engineering. You took a hydrology class. Like, why don't you go back and become a science teacher? Like, you like teaching, you like, working with the youths, and go back into science. You love science, and some of your science teachers were some of the most impactful people on you. And so I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So I did it, and it was 2008, and they stopped hiring teachers. In fact, they were firing teachers, and so I couldn't find a job anywhere. Um, I put out all sorts of different applications and stuff online, just kind of seeing what different things are. That's foreshadowing for later in the conversation. And then I went back to work. I became able to teach in California on what they call like an intern eligible thing. Um, but again, nothing was coming up. So I was working for my parents. I worked for them for like 2 years or so at the feed store. I was like assistant manager, my dad's right hand man at the store, and I just felt called, like God just kept putting it on my heart. Was it John 21 or John 22, where the reinstatement of Peter, where Jesus kept Jesus kept saying, like, do you love me more than
Feed
these,
my lambs, feed my sheep.
and
Yeah.
feed my sheep? And I interpret that scripture as when they were out fishing, and it says like Jesus had risen, and he'd shown himself, but then they were sitting there, and it says Peter got a couple of the other guys, and he's like, we're gonna go back fishing. And I interpret it as like that's what they knew, right? They had been following Jesus, and they had been living off the largesse of the people who were following Jesus and helping support them. It says the ladies, gives the names of the ladies in the households that were supporting them. And so they were living off that largesse. Peter's got a family. He's got a wife, and so Peter gets the guys together because that used to fish with him, and he's like, okay, we got to go provide for our families, so we're going to go back and go fishing. So they go out there, and they're super unsuccessful, and then all of a sudden Jesus comes back, and he's like, hey guys, have any luck? And they're like, no, we've been fishing all night. He's like, throw your nets. And so they throw their nets, and then they catch all this fish. And then John's like, hey, that's Jesus. I recognize that. And Peter's like, what? And so he swims back over, and then he's cooking fish. Jesus is cooking the things that they were spending their time trying to catch, and they weren't having any success. And then as they're eating, like I imagine that's what he's saying. Do you love me more than these? Other people disagree. A lot of other biblical scholars who are way smarter than I disagree, but that's what I'm picturing it as. These being the fish, meaning like the thing that you rely on to provide for you and your family. Do you trust me? Do you love me more than these things? And so I was feeling that as I was working for my family, because it's like I could just stay at my family store, and I could just work there and be a part of that. And there's nothing wrong with being at a family store and working there. Like I'm not saying Jesus is calling all of us to do that at all, but just for me, it just felt like it was calling me away. And so I was trying to figure out what that looked like. And I remembered of an opportunity, this community, intentional Christian community in Fresno, California, called the Pink House. It was loosely through InterVarsity and through another church down there, and all these people would live in one house in downtown urban Fresno, and do intentional Christian community with an urban focus, urban leadership focused. And so I applied, and I was accepted, and so I retired from the feed store and I'm pretty frugal when I'm living on my own, and so I had some savings that I could just kind of live off of. I went down and was a part of that community, and just it helped me see a whole nother part of the Christian faith and Christian ministry, getting to be a part of that. And it was actually really awesome. I made some good friends that I'm still friends with to this day, and it's kind of like the college experience that I always wanted, where it's like a bunch of people dedicated to loving God and loving each other and loving the people and community around them. And so I wanted to stay there. I wanted to do that. And so I was going to join InterVarsity and work at the community college while doing other urban ministry. And I was working in a specific little neighborhood. They try to get people to move into these neighborhoods called relocators. So I was going to move into this neighborhood next to another family that had already been there, established a little community center within that neighborhood. And so that's where I was going. That's what I was doing. I was excited. And I finally had really good friends. Like up until this point, I hadn't had a lot of super close friends. And so I finally had really good, close friends. And God kind of sent me an email and said, hey, we're looking for a science teacher to teach in Budapest, Hungary. And so I replied back, I am not the teacher you're looking for. I am not and they replied back a couple of weeks later, yes, you are. I was like, I'm not even credentialed. They're like, we don't care. You just need somebody. And so I just was kept trying to not go through that door, and God just kept opening it, and finally I filled out the application because I felt like he was leading me to do it. And and
we think we've sorted out the internet issues, so let's try again.
either that, or the shadow cabal does not want this interview published. So um so anyway, so I got an email through the school to come teach middle school science, and I didn't want to, and so I was fasting and praying and trying to discern God's will, and he kept bringing up Genesis 12:1, where he tells Abraham to leave the country of his fathers and go to the country he's going to show him, and just in so many random different ways where it was clearly an answer to what I was praying. And finally, I was like, God, just if you really want me to go, you need to just tell me from somebody who would actually not want me to go. And so we were having a potluck with my church that I was a part of, a little bilingual church, and one of the families I was going to be living next to, uh, Steve. I was talking to Steve's like, "Hey, what are your two options about after the pink house?" And so I told him, and he's like, "I don't know why I need to say this, but and it goes against what we want you to do, but I really feel like you should go teach science." And I'm like, "What?" And his wife was sitting right there with her two kids, and she's like, "Steve, you can't tell him that. He's supposed to come live by us. He's supposed to help us." And he's like, I don't know why, I just feel like I have to. And so that was clearly God answering that. And so I was like, okay, God, I guess that's what I want to do, which was really hard for me. So I went through that process. I ended up having to, it's a missional position, so I had to fundraise, and go through all of that process, and that was not fun. But again, God just provided in largest ways that I cannot take any credit for. And he got me there, and like I was able to raise my funds in record time. Like the mission agency I went through was like, hey, like that was impressive. Like we really see that happen. And so I got there and started teaching, and but it was really hard. I really, especially that first like 6 months to a year, was really wrestling with like, why did you bring me here? I had i had friendships. I was doing ministry. I was taking care of your sheep, like I kept throwing that back in his face, like 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 what's going on? Like you let me taste the beauty of intentional Christian community and friendship, and then you rip it away. And I was like, that's messed up. That's not very nice, God. So, so I'm wrestling with him, and I don't doubt him. I don't doubt his goodness, but it was really a huge humbling of my heart, where it's just like, I have to trust you in this. I know this is your will, but this does not feel good. This does not feel good. Um, and I think but definitely part of the reason why he brought me there, was I ended up meeting my wife over there. And so we met, we got engaged over there, and then ended up getting married. We flew back to the States to get married over Christmas break of the next school year, and then flew back and was doing our married life, living the dream. It was pretty nice. And then a couple of years into our marriage, my wife had always had some kind of weird health stuff. Like she would get migraines like once a month or so. That would take her out, like knock her flat for a couple of days, and other kind of headache things. But she started to get some other really weird symptoms, and so eventually, through a long process of going through the medical process in Hungary, uh, we got diagnosed with premature ovarian failure, which is basically like early menopause, like really, really early menopause, because she's still in her 30s, mid 30s, um, and so basically that was like a real life changer for her, and for me as well. Just processing that, but it was really hard and ground shaking for her, faith shaking, and just getting to walk through that process with her. Um, and like she says, like she never lost her faith, but in that process, she felt like she was calling out to God, and He wasn't answering. He wasn't really manifesting His love in a tangible way, which she had always grown up with the understanding that He would, and so she felt like it was a betrayal. So anyway, so I was just walking through that with her, and her questioning. Um, and the silence from God, and I'd gone through earlier. I'd wrestled with that myself when I was younger in college, and just, I had all these friends and stuff have all these experiences where they're like, oh, I heard God talk to me and blah, blah, blah. And I never once ever felt God talking to me. And so, and then you always wrestle with, reoccurrent sin and things that are in your life that especially young men wrestle with. And so finally I was like, this is before, this is back, so this is like a flashback. But and I was out, I was like, went to a park, and I was like yelling at God, come on, like, how do I, what's going on? Like I wasn't doubting Him, but it's just like, maybe I'm not an elect, I'm not really that much of a Calvinist. And so that was kind of the weird part too, is because I was like, I'm not really Calvinist, but maybe that is a real thing. Maybe I'm not a the elect, right? And so I was angry with him, and I went back. I was living with my grandparents at the time, and I opened up. I had all these spiritual books and stuff, and then I had one non-spiritual book that I'd actually brought back with me from my parents' house called Villains by Necessity. Super good book. And but it was a fantasy one. It wasn't the movie Villains by Necessity. That's a different movie. It was about like knights and dragons and stuff. And so I opened that up, and it was like the one real quasi spiritual part. And this lady was getting tested by a god, and 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 eventually the lady at the end of the chapter is like, I have faith. I just have faith. And as I got to the end of that chapter, I was like, all right, God, all right. I'll shut my mouth, and I'll keep believing, living on a prayer, right? And so come back to the regular storyline, and my wife's wrestling with this, and I've wrestled with this, the the dark nights of the soul, and so just trying to be with her in that, and that was really hard, um, because she was looking for answers and she was looking for comfort, but I couldn't really provide either of them. Um, and I almost started like an internet thing called Elkina, Men of Elkina, or Men Like Elkina, or something like that. And that's the gentleman who was blanking on her names now, but Samuel's mom. That was her husband's name when she couldn't conceive and she was barren, and he was like, I love you. I love you a lot. I give you double portions. I'm not God. I can't change it. Um, and so just kind of entering into that space. Um, Eventually, we went through. She she ended up having more health issues and stuff, but we got to a point where there was kind of balanced out. She ended up getting diagnosed with microcompacting cardiomyopathy for her heart. That was a heart thing, and so she was taking some medicine for that. And so we got to a point where her health stuff kind of leveled out, and so we went into the adoption process and filled out all the adoption paperwork and raised the money for that. And then again, that was another crazy God process, and we were able to adopt our son. Um, and that was an infant adoption in the United States. So his mother had chosen us to for the adoption, and that was in Kansas. And he actually was born 3 weeks early. I forget. He was at 36 weeks, and so we had to fly back. We were actually supposed to be there earlier. We were still in Hungary. We were going to fly back and be there a week early, but we got the call like, he's born. You got to come. Your son's here. And so we had to change our flights, change everything, and again, God's providence and working of both providentially and through the grace of the church as a community, right? People we never knew or met sacrificed time, effort, coordination, material stuff to help all this process. And it was just an amazing thing. And like that's the church, right? That's the body of Christ loving each other sacrificially, even though they don't know what part of the body. It's the right pinky helping the left kneecap, and it's like the right pinky and the left kneecap never have much in common, but they're helping each other. Um, and so that was an amazing process. And then bring him back in, he had to be fed every 2 to 3 hours. He was super underweight, and he's still super underweight and undersized, and so we were having to feed him all the time. So I haven't really had a good night's sleep since he was born. And I get the 3 o'clock shift, so I woke up around 3 o'clock to feed him, and then he wouldn't go for up until like 9, 10 months. He wouldn't fall back asleep if we weren't holding him, and so I'd hold him, and I got to read through Harry Potter for the first time, so that was exciting. And I didn't. Truth be told, I didn't really like it. Don't hate me, Harry Potter fans. And
What contrast it with something that you do like in literature?
I like The Hobbit. I do like um, Kime. I read Kime Potok's The Chosen. That was a good thing. I like reading just kind of cheesy, run of the mill fantasy. What got me into reading when I was in high school was this series called Dragonlance, and so it was a Dungeon and Dragon adaptation
Hmm.
novel series.
I've
Uh,
heard of it. I haven't listened to any of it, but or sorry, read any. Now I say listen because all
yeah.
books are on.
So I mean, it's not bad. It's not going to win any awards. Um, I don't know, Bible stuff like that. I don't know what's good. I read it. I read it when I know it. You know, um, it's good. Anyways, who's the guy? Who's the author? I really liked. He wrote the short. He wrote sci-fi short stories, and the movie Arrival is based off of his short story. Um, but anyways, he's a really good author. Super recommend those short stories if somebody's interested in going and getting those ones.
Ted Chiang.
Yeah, Ted.
Don't
He's
Yeah, I don't know anything about him, but yeah.
he's really good. Recommend him. All right. So so our son. So that was there's some complications with him, but I mean it all kind of worked out. My wife started to get more medical complications. She retired from teaching. She was an incredible teacher. She was amazing teacher and public speaker. I think she still could be if she wanted to, but she's decided to be a stay-at-home mom and deal with health issues. So um, around right before COVID happened, we were like, hey, she's having all these medical things. I think it's time we move back and get those straightened out. Our time here on this overseas is kind of feel like it's coming to a close. We both felt that individually, and so then we came and so we were getting ready to leave, and then COVID happens, and um, well, and so everything went remote, and I was like, I could either sit here and watch Netflix, or I could try to better myself because I knew I wasn't going to have any skills going back, and I didn't want to go back in teaching. So I went into the like computer programming and data science, specifically data science field, and went through kind of a boot camp for that and some other online training. Tried to put together my portfolio and stuff. And then we moved back to the States. There was a break there in the middle of the summer where things kind of calmed down on both Europe and the US side. And we were able to move back. And we, we were just looking for a job anywhere. In the middle of that, we originally were in Illinois, and then we drove back to California where my family still is. She's originally from Illinois. She's from Central Illinois, and her dad was a pastor. Um, and so that's why we were in Illinois, and then we drove to California, and then we were just looking for anything for jobs. While we were in California, my wife ended up needing surgery, and so she went through that surgery right before everything closed down again with COVID. Then she ended up getting COVID, and so my parents ended up having to go live with my sister. Well, my wife was in their house, and so was my son and I. celebrating Christmas and New Year's and stuff all by ourselves. And while she was isolated because that was the thing that they were having us do. My mom had like asthma, heart issues, like all the things that you could list off for like being bad for COVID, and she had them all before COVID, and so we were really trying to protect her, make sure she was going to be okay, because if she got it, then we were really worried for her. Um, and then we I ended up getting a job with a transportation company in Central Illinois. So we moved back to Central Illinois. And as soon as we moved there, her parents informed us that they had sold their house and were moving down to Arkansas. And so they moved they moved down to Arkansas within 3 months of us coming back to Illinois. And so she has some extended family still. My wife still has some extended family around, but by and large, we don't have a lot of family network here. And so I worked for the transportation company. It was a great one, and but I was doing some jobs, and I really still kind of was hoping to get into data science. And so then I transitioned from like a driver manager person to accounting. And I was in accounting for like 2 years, and then I was slowly dying there because I'm a dreamer and I would just work really slow, and they were paying me a way more than they needed to be paying me for the amount of work I was getting done. Not because I was like getting distracted or messing around. It's just you know um, as I look at stuff, I have to rethink through everything. Like it's hard for me to just kind of get a rhythm of something and just kind of like do it. Like I'm constantly having to rethink my process through everything in life. Every time I'm doing something, like, all right, how do I do this again? And and that's really slow if part of your job is just to quickly put in information and double check spreadsheets. Um, and and so opportunity came back for teaching at a small Christian school. And so I was like, hey, maybe I'll take that opportunity. So I reached out to them and they're like, yeah, you should come be with us. And so I entered back into teaching middle school and high school. Again, all through this process, my wife continued to have medical issues. Um, she ended up getting a special type of cancer called GIST. And so we dealt with that. She had a huge, large tumor. And then she ended up having her gallbladder removed, and went through that. And so now she still has some pain. She still has some health issues lingering, undiagnosed and unspecified as to what's going on with those things. And so that's just been part of that process. Um, and so then I was teaching, and last year, about halfway through the teaching year, I could just mentally feel myself running dry. Like I was reaching down to find something to put forth to be able to interact well with the students, and there was just empty, and I didn't have anything. So I could feel myself crashing, but I knew I couldn't crash because I needed to, like, my wife can't work, or at least not a normal job. And my son he ended up getting to go to the school, which was great for him because he has some learning learning issues, and so the classes were small, and it's a great learning environment, small um, classes, and the group of kids that he's with is perfect for him. So it was really, I feel like God brought me to that school in a lot of ways just so that he could be in those classes. Um, because if he went to the public school, he would have been eaten up. He has a very gentle soul, um, outwardly. And like I've seen him playing with kids, and kids will just walk up and take his toy, and he just kind of stands there and he just kind of takes it. And then later on, he's like, Dad, why did that kid take my toy? And then he has fantasies of like, I'm gonna beat that kid up, blah, 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 but he never does. He never does it. He's shoveling it. So we're like, no, you don't want to shove that all inside. You got to be able to fix. Anyways, that's a lot of stories. But so then I felt like I was crashing, and so I was like, I want to get into something where I'm doing manual work, manual labor. Again, going back to my growing up, I loved playing sports. I loved using my body. I loved being part of a team and working with other people. And so I was like, I think I need to go back to those roots. um, and be a part of that. And so fortunately, the school I was at needed somebody to come along and kind of start learning the ropes for the facilities position. The guy that's been there, it, it was going to be having some surgeries this year. He's already had two, and so we're hoping he'll be coming back. But they needed somebody to come back on, and so I started working with the facilities at the school, and that was great, especially during the summer. Oh man, that was perfect. I just put on and that's where I started getting into PVK, and this little corner, and then he started his I just go back and listen through randos before he even started streaming those randos all the time. I just go back to the randos playlist and I just hit play and it just cycle through, um, and I could just sit there and I kind of compare it to the Forrest Gump where when Ginny leaves him towards the end of the movie, Ginny leaves him because she's pregnant. Spoilers, sorry. And and he doesn't know how to process it, and so he goes and he just starts running, right? And he runs across the U.S. four times or whatever it says he is, and he's like, I just started running, and so I think that's kind of where I'm at, where there's so much that's happened, especially with my wife and her health issues, and then being overseas and not being around family. Like I'm a homebody. Like I want to be around family and depend on them. And but God's not had me there, and God's not had me in those positions of comfort where I can depend on those things. And then transferring back from overseas for almost 10 years. We were there over. My wife was there 12, and I was there 9. And then issues with our son, and just like I've never had a real chance to really process all of that, and I still don't, and so I could feel like, but I felt like my body was like, you need to do something. And so and so I wanted to get into that manual labor, and so especially during the summer I had to hand wash all the carpets, and it took like a couple of weeks, and I was just sitting there like 8 hours a day, just washing carpets, and it was great because I was washing carpets, and I say it's like your body's getting to work out what your mind doesn't have the ability or time to work out, and um, so yeah, I guess that's kind of I'm in the middle of that process. Just still kind of um, feeling out those those different topics, and then trying to get back into manual labor. Like it's not an easy task, especially if you have a family that you're trying to provide for, because a lot of those entry level jobs are not paying a wage that I could maintain a family on. And no, that's not like a economic diss towards capitalism or whatever, because I understand, like, coming from a small business, I understand like new employees cost a lot, especially new employees where there's a high on ramp and skill level set that they're going to be needing to train. Like that takes a lot of time to learn, and in a lot of those situations, like, basically they're costing you money because it's taking you longer to do stuff. They're doing it wrong, and so they're messing stuff up that you got to go back and fix and stuff. And so it's really an investment by them. And if I'm already middle aged, like if they invest 3 to 5 years in me, then they're only going to get you know 10, 15, 20 years of work instead of a good 30 to 40 years of work out of a person and stuff. So
And that's
yeah,
if you stay with that particular company,
right.
because if you don't, then yeah.
And so then going through that process has been really humbling as well, because it's like I can't even, literally I couldn't get a job as a lawnmower. They're like, oh yeah, you can come work. Have you had any experience with riding lawnmowers? No, but I'm pretty sure I could learn pretty quickly. And they're like, nope. I'm like, okay, thanks. And so, yeah, so just I'm still just dealing with that, and processing that. So now we're all caught up. You have any questions?
How old's your son now?
My wife said not to give away some
Oh,
of those
gotcha.
information. So he's early elementary. So
Gotcha.
early
Gotcha.
early
Cool.
elementary,
Cool.
between K and like third, in
Yeah.
between there ish.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah. And so you find yourself in central Illinois,
Yeah,
not much family around,
yeah,
and yeah, No, it's a similar thing for me because, I do have a really good church commu oh, I'm gonna pause it one more time.
Right? Um, Sorry for the
So
technical issues.
yeah,
My my phone, I had to put it in the freezer for a second.
no problem, no problem.
So I guess timeline wise, I kind of got to the end of the story. I guess big picture wise, um, things that resonate with me. One is just the topic of forgiveness, learning how to forgive, learning what that means. Again, with my friend passing away, we'd had a disagreement right before she had passed away. And so part of that wrestling with her death is wrestling with, I hadn't been able to reconcile with her about that disagreement. So that was a big part of it. And then later on, and so I thought I kind of had learned from that. And then later on, when I was at the Pink House, I had another friend who had a really traumatic and terrible experience at the hands of another person, and just um, it was really hard for me to forgive that other person. And so again, it's learning again that forgiveness is a process, and isn't always easy, and we feel like we need to judge, um, to be justice and to enact justice here on earth. And God has established the governments to be a form of justice to help keep us from anarchy. But at the same time, God says, justice is mine, says the Lord. And we were talking to Chris the other day. We were talking about this idea and just how like there's going to be people in heaven where you're like, sometimes people. Sorry, back up. Sometimes people say, if this person is in heaven, then I don't want to be there. It's not for me. And just thinking about that, like as I was thinking about that, like the person, the thief or the criminal on the cross with Jesus, and Jesus said, "Hey, today you'll be with me in paradise." Um, he he was a criminal. Like he was a legitimate criminal, which means he had done bad things to other people. Like other people had suffered at his hands by the decisions he made, and they may have been there at the foot of the cross, looking up, saying, "Yes, justice have served. He's dying. He was a bad man, right?" I don't know anything about who he was or anything. We don't know anything, but he could have been like a bad father. He could have been just a bad person in general. And people are like, yes, he's getting justice. And then all of a sudden, Jesus is like, hey, you're going to be with me in paradise. Those people have been like, what? Like, why, why does he get to go with you in paradise? He was terrible. Right. So they used to have like the emergent church used to have something like or not maybe it was maybe it was Billy Graham, but somebody they used to talk about like the the bit about God's grace, how it's just like unconceivable, the radicalness of that grace. And so forgiveness, learning how to do that in my life has been a common theme and thread that I run into. Another one is just like what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean in today's culture? Um, right out of high school, I was given Wild at Heart, and that was pretty impactful on my outlook, and just processing um, you know, manhood, processing our relationship with our fathers, processing that some people don't have fathers and their father figures, and personally, my father and my father figure. Um, he was my dad. My dad did the best that he could, but he would say he was an admitted workaholic, and so his first uh, loyalty was to the store, and so he tried the best he could. He of all three of us of children that he had, he probably actually dedicated more time and effort to helping raise me than the other two. So I have the benefit of that. He liked that I was in sports, and he helped coach football for a while, and so I got to see that part of him and be a part of him in that way. but but at the end of the day, he was also working at the store all the time, and I know that was hard certain family members and stuff, but you know, and so it's not always been easy, and so how to deal with processing that, and what does that look like in my life? How do I want to emulate the good things he did, and how do I want to try to stay away from things I might have done differently. But as I get older, I find I'm having more and more grace towards him because it's just like it's not easy. It's not an easy deal. And so, you know, again, I try. I understand he loves me. He loves my siblings, and he loves my mom, his wife. Um, but he's a human, and we're a human, and so again, Wild at Heart just help process that, put names to things, um, wounds, and I know some people have like a bad rap. It has kind of a bad rap where it's like you go through your midlife crisis and your wife should just let you buy that motorcycle you always wanted and go be a Harley guy or whatever. I don't know. You know, they have with toxic masculinity now in certain parts they have it has kind of a bad rap, but I think it was really helpful. So that's been a common thread too. What does it mean to be a man? And then probably another one is just like friendship. Um, what does it mean to have close friends? What does it mean to be a good friend? How do you establish those? What does that look like? Like I said, going in through the Pink House, I finally was able to have some good friends, and then being overseas, I got a couple of really good friends. There's two of us, or there's two other guys. The three of us uh, will call each other on a weekly basis and pray for each other. And so that's just been a blessing to be able to have those guys in my life, even though we're in different parts of the country. We've all come back to the States. We're all in different parts of the country. One's in North Carolina, one's in Wisconsin, and I'm here in Illinois. And so, being a good friend, I'm not always a good friend because sometimes it's easier to be a bad friend because it's you know just not calling or not texting or like I'm tired right now. I've poured into everybody else, you know. And I find with men we like doing things together. Like you know, there's that old cliche, but a lot most cliches, there's some truth in it. Like we like doing something next to each other. I remember Ron Swanson would say he's, he's like one of my best friends. We would sit there and work and not say anything to each other for days on on end. You know, and he's like, those were great times. We could sit and not say anything to each other for days, and so I think there's some truth to that. And I think some of that part of the I've heard you guys talk about like in the TLC like play, and I think that's part of doing stuff with each other is play is like how we come alongside. And so part of it is the deep meaningful conversations. And when I was telling my wife, oh, I was going to be doing this today, she's like, this sounds weird. I was like, yeah, it's my internet friend's hazing ritual. uh she's like she's like, yeah, that's strange. So there's
It
that
is a
part of it.
ritual now. Yeah, I don't know if it's hazing or not because it's but it is a ritual.
So, um, yeah, so that's part of it, the deep, meaningful conversation. But the other part is just you know having fun with each other and doing each other. And I think it's kind of interesting. He coming in, being a newbie, and hearing all this talk of like, what are we? What's our space? What are we trying to do? And part of me, I was kind of like, you just are a space. Like I don't think you should think too much on that. I recently heard interview this guy, Austin. I never heard of him before, but he did a conversations with Tyler, which is a economist, Tyler Cowen, and Tyler asked him, "Hey, what makes you a good YouTuber?" I guess he's a famous YouTuber. What makes you a good YouTuber? Like, what's your production function? What's your thing? And he's like, and then Austin was like, I actually don't know, and I don't really want to know because the moment you know, like then you start playing into that, and you start like it starts going sideways. And he's like, I know tons of people that's happened to where it's like, I knew they find out you could tell they found out what their secret sauce is, and they lean into it, and it's too much, and it doesn't quite work well. And so I feel like with the TLC, like Like we know the things we do is have good conversations with each other. We know we like to have fun with each other. And if other people want to join that, then they can join that. If other people grow and mature in that environment and then leave, then that's a good thing too. Like communities come and go, and they leave, but it's just kind of being faithful to each other in that community at the time you have. And so it's kind of just interesting to be a part of that, hear that and be a part of that conversation.
Well, I'm going to break that rule and say that I think you yourself just stated what it's actually about, and I'll explain because and I didn't really make this connection until right now. But why is it that we're able to play and then also have these really deep conversations where we poke each other in the axiom, so to speak, or we test to see, oh, are you really Catholic? Are you really Calvinist? How deep is your faith really? Oh, all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think the key to it is forgiveness. I
Mm-hmm.
actually think that's the key to both play and having really great conversations is that you're going to mess up. But if the expectation is forgiveness in good faith,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you can sense, and this has to be something sensed, I think, of good faith. And as you were talking about forgiveness, it was so ironic to me because I have a monologue. I'm calling them Neal's rants that I already recorded that I'm probably going to release before this video comes out. And yeah, I could just show it on the screen. And I'm titling the monologue "The Decline and Fall of Forgiveness and Grace Culture."
Yeah.
And like it seems to me like our culture is obsessed with justice now. It's like
Yeah.
immediacy, like getting what I think is right now, like getting
Mm-hmm.
it immediately. Like so we keep moving closer and closer to the now, whatever it is, and that includes self-righteousness, what
Mm-hmm.
I am convinced is right.
Yeah.
And I think where TLC succeeds, and also where we fail, by the way, is where we fail is when we become self-righteous, when we presume to know, oh, this is the way we need to go, or this is the right thing, or these are the wrong people, or whatever it is. And I see us as kind of a safe haven, like a beacon in the night. It's like when the storm is raging out there, people can come to the safe haven, and one expectation of the safe haven should be something like you will be welcomed and received, but you have to be welcome and receiving of others. And really, that welcoming and receiving of others is like constantly forgiving others for disagreeing with obviously your correct standpoint. Obviously, my standpoint's right, but I
Right.
still need to be welcoming and forgiving towards everyone else that has the wrong standpoint. And I'm saying that facetiously, but you
Sure.
get what
Yeah.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
because it never, yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't have it. I was just emphatic agreement.
Yeah, yeah. So but like that forgiveness is addictive, and it's really once you get good at it, like I just love it because it's like, oh man, I can make a new friend. Anytime I have the opportunity to either A, be forgiven, or yeah, or sorry, A, be forgiven, B, forgive, that is a friendship that's just waiting to blossom
Mm-hmm.
because like until something bad happens between two people, you don't actually know whether or not you have a friendship, because
Mm-hmm.
when the bad thing happens and then the forgiveness happens, and then it's like, oh shit, we can actually sustain this thing past bad, like whatever the bad is, we can sustain this thing. And then you got you like you're starting to build on solid ground, and
Yeah.
that's when really cool things can begin to happen. And
Yeah.
so yeah, as the rest of the world seems increasingly more obsessed with like just justice, like their view of justice. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we can be the counter argument to that and be like, it's better over here. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
All you need
Mm-hmm.
to do is like let go of your self-righteousness. It's better over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I just listened to interview with Grim Grizz, and he was like Carla or Carol, anyways, well, a lady. I'm terrible with names, and that's what he said. That's she's like, I've seen a maturing in a process, uh, in you in your videos, and she's like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Well, I came in as a troll, and I was throwing rocks. I was throwing rocks at PVK and all these other guys, and instead of PVK yelling down like stop throwing rocks, he instead invited me to come in and have a rando and have a conversation." He's like that was like the turning point where he's like that was very meaningful to him, and I was like, yeah, that's a good. Oh man, that's such a good thing. And so I think that's exactly what you're saying there. Oh, I lost you. Oh no.
No, 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 that wasn't you, that was me, that was me. I
Oh
was corn
phew.
cob. No, my fault, my fault. So I think we're headed toward the conclusion of our conversation of the rando talk, but got Olson's story, and um, yeah, I think there's a lot of elements to your story that will resonate with a lot of different people within the corner. There's personal loss at a young age that resonates with me. I had basically my best friend at the time commit suicide, which was the first really traumatic event of my life and stuck with me. It wasn't enough to bring me back to Christ, not at that moment in time, but probably planted a seed within me. Um, but also going through medical issues, going through health issues, going through circumstances that are beyond your control, praying and asking God for intervention or at least anything, something, some indication, and being received in silence. Um, I know that those are things that many within the corner have experienced at some point in their life. And one thing I found in all the people that have entered into this not space, this virtual space, is that I've yet to really meet a naive person who has been in the corner, like someone who hasn't truly experienced the difficulties of the world,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they are.
Yeah.
And that's a remarkable thing. And that the other thing that I think unites us is just an amount of hope and optimism that seems almost counterintuitive. So it's that combination of being beyond the naive and still having that hope in the future
Mm-hmm.
and in God ultimately, but um and that combination makes some remarkable, truly remarkable people. And so I do want to encourage folks, anyone who resonates with Olson's story, post in the comments. You could reach out to me. I could put you in touch with him, and also anyone in Central Illinois. I know Nick Freerillian is pretty close to you. Not really close, but I know you
Mm-hmm.
haven't met up yet. But
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Hoping to get something going with the estuary. I reached out to him, but he's kind of further away than I was thinking. But
Yeah,
uh, but yeah, that'd be really cool. Get something going.
yeah. So, do you have any final thoughts or questions or anything you want to
Mm.
touch on?
No, yeah. I don't have a. I'm a slow processor, so come back and hit me up in 6 months, and I'll have all sorts of things I didn't say. Um, but no, just thank you so much for taking the time and being a person to reach out to and connect with, and um, just the graciousness of that, and you know making connections.
Yeah, it's a
So
really interesting thing because if it's very hard to say why people are called out of the lurk or are called to start participating more uh, directly in this little online band of
right.
misfits, but I don't regret it, not in the
Mhm.
slightest. And I don't know. I sense the spirit remains strong and the right spirit, a gracious and hopeful spirit, like I
Mm.
said. So and
Yeah.
that actually, Olson, that's something that struck me about you when I talked to you on the phone. You seemed one of the hardest lines in the Bible is when Jesus says, "Do not be anxious about your life."
Mhm.
And it's like, who's not anxious about their
Yeah.
That's like,
No,
oh,
totally.
I could just flip a
Yeah.
switch within me and not be anxious. Okay, Jesus, thanks. What a great piece of advice. Lovely, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but as I was talking to you, I was like, man, this guy, g- this guy genuinely does not seem or feel anxious about his life. I'm like, that is impressive, you know?
Well, thank you.
And yeah. So maybe it's, you encountering all those different people on in at the feed store growing up. Maybe it's your experience in camp, and maybe it's your experience teaching. Um, so yeah, anyone out there that has similar experiences and would like to connect with Olson, please reach out. And I will say, we do have one guy, Allen, Allyn. He also goes by Corner Citizen.
Mhm.
He's the only Corner Citizen, by the way, the one and only. Um, yeah, he when he did his rando with PVK, he talked a lot about his camping experiences being formative in his faith, and just especially being a camp counselor
Mhm.
and helping guide and coach and teach.
Mhm.
That was really, really formative. So, Alan, if you're listening,
There you go.
um, so
Well, and yeah, and part of the one of the reasons I wanted to do some sort of rando or something. I don't want to there's a lot of mixed feelings in that, but just when I'm leaving comments, I want people to know the spirit behind it. Sometimes I'm silly. Sometimes I say stuff just to kind of to be silly. Uh, but a lot of times I'm asking legitimate questions where I'm like, I'm just curious and I want to know. I'm not trying to convince you of something else or you know say opponent processing. Sometimes I'm opponent processor, but
yeah,
a lot of times I'm really curious. I'm just like, either it's something I didn't know of or something I thought I knew differently, and I want to hear your perspective. Or, um, there's a couple people I've asked like, hey, can you clarify this? Like, I want to hear your perspective because I thought I knew it in a certain way, but you seem to be talking about it a different way, and that's interesting. Like that's very interesting. As PVK always says, like that's so interesting. So, um, yeah, if you see me in the comments and you think I'm doing something, I'm trolling in
no,
an even
I've
spirit. I'm
seen
not doing
I've
it.
seen your comments, and we have way more trolley comments. So no, you're kind of an typical amount of questioning and trolling. So you're good. Yeah, you keep doing what you're doing.
So yeah, that's part of that. That's a big thing because I just want like to people behind that know the spirit behind that Olson helper. That's and so that's why I always have Olson because keep a little anonymity because it's already in my tag. So I was like, well, they already know that
Yeah.
part of my name, and then
Olson, well,
helper
Olson's a good handle. We don't have any other Olsons, so
and
be
then
Olson.
helper is like I was reading through all the other people's handles and I'm just kind of like they're kind of descriptors and stuff and they have like cool stories behind it and I'm like if I want to be known for something in a new community, what do I want to be known as? And I want it's like I like to think of myself as somebody who helps. There's a lot of leaders, tons of people who want to be leaders. I don't want to be a leader. I want to be the second person. The second in man in charge. I used to growing up as a history nerd, so I watched that movie Gettysburg. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a long one, but it has Colonel Chamberlain of the something 102nd Maine or something, and he's like the head. He's like the leader. But then he has this private who's a Scottish friend or a sergeant who's a Scottish friend, made up character, and I always related to him, And then growing up watching Robin Hood and Little John, I always related more to Little John. It's just like the sidekick, the helper, is what I didn't relate to Robin, but I didn't really like Batman that much. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm involved in this Catholic men's retreat called Acts that happens once a year, and it was something I experienced back in 2018. That was formative in my faith, and we we have a we have kind of a younger generation of guys, myself included, that are taking leadership roles, and we have this one guy who's kind of like the classical male leader. Like he's about 6'2", he's charismatic, well spoken, like a football build, like
Mhm.
very blue collar, but he's got his own business. Like, and he's a genuine, wonderful man. Like he's a genuine good man. And people were pushing him to kind of take on that mantle of leadership. And I could tell just like watching him, watching his body language, that he sort of wanted to do it, but he had some reservations. And so I came to him right after the meeting and I'm like, look, you are the right guy for the job. I can do all the project management and tech stuff behind the scenes that you're probably a little worried about. I can do all of that. You delegate to me, I will do it, and we will make it happen. And you are the right man for this job, because most of the guys that are coming into this retreat are like blue collar, like New Orleans, like Southern Louisiana, like talking like and like I can't. I'm not that guy. Oh, Olson just. Um, I'll pause there one more time. Yeah, so I know what you mean about, uh, just needing to be the second person or the guy behind the guy, and that's a really fun role to play because it's less pressure often, and but
Sorry
I'd
about
like
this.
to. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's your first time doing this. There's inevitably, technical stuff, but I'd like to thank you, Olson, for
Yeah,
coming on, sharing your story. I hope people reach out, and yeah, any final thoughts before we close the conversation?
yeah. Just thank you so much, and yeah.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, I'm sure, and we'll figure out a bunch of stuff. So,
All right, sounds
thank
good.
you all.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.